Hello everyone, and I'm Autobot Sonic the Telltale Gamer, bringing laser learning Transformers, Telltale games, and more. I am so happy I can finally say this, but happy EarthSpark Season 2 Day, everybody! Today, June 7th, 2024, nearly 1 year after Season 1 wrapped up back in July of 2023, we now have the first 10 episodes of Transformers EarthSpark Season 2, and oh my god! These episodes. I have a lot to say about them, but overall, I had a great time with them, and they were definitely worth the wait. So, we're gonna start off our big review of EarthSpark Season 2 today with Episode 1 of Season 2, Aftermath. So the way it's going to work, for those of you who weren't around for when I was uploading all my Season 1 reviews, is I'm going to try to get one of these reviews out every week until we reach the end of the batch with Episodes 9 and 10. So for those who don't know, today you'll be watching Episode 1, Aftermath, and then next week I'll be doing Episode 2, then so on, except for when we get to Episode 9, because that's a two-parter episode, so I'm going to do Episodes 9 and 10 all in one there. But anyway, here we are with Transformers EarthSpark Season 2, Episode 1, Aftermath. And man, oh man, a lot of stuff happened in this episode. So much fun action this episode. It's very much so a spectacle episode, but also helps us basically understand as the audience what happened in the year between the events of Season 1 and 2. So I think you're all going to really enjoy this one. And it honestly is one of my favorite episodes in this season. Definitely. But anyway, I think I've talked about this enough. Let's go ahead finally and jump into Season 2 of EarthSpark with my review of Episode 1 Aftermath and see everything it did right and what it did wrong. Season 2 Episode 1 starts off with a bang in the middle of a huge fight between the Maltos and Decepticons. So I absolutely love how this fight sort of basically not only reintroduces us to the world of EarthSpark, but also just shows us how much the Terrans and Maltos have grown in the years since the events of Season 1, and even the start of literally the first frame of this episode is a title card that says 1 year later, as we then cut to a large highway interstate, presumably, I like to say, out of Philadelphia back to Witwicky. We see Robbie and Mo inside Optimus's trailer with Robbie on like a giant turret in Optimus's trailer shooting at Skywarp and Novastorm and Swindle, who are chasing after him trying to get an Emberstone shard that is being carried by Optimus. And I absolutely love everything about this. So for those who don't know, this episode was once again storyboarded by none other than the legendary Kevin Molina Ortiz, and I am so happy that he came back for Season 2. He and JJ Conway are the only storyboard artists from Season 1 that returned from Season 2, unfortunately. So, unfortunately, this means Stephanie Ressler, India Swift, Alexandra Naerges, and others like them did not return for Season 2. But I think a lot of the storyboard artists in this season, alongside the returning ones like JJ Conway and Kevin Ortiz, did a fantastic job, especially with this opening scene. Like, I absolutely love just how, for lack of better terms, badass this scene makes Robbie, Mo, and everyone else look, where literally Skywarp teleports onto Optimus' trailer, shooting off the little capsule containing the Emberstone shard, where it looks like she's got it, but then Mo comes out of nowhere with her cyber suit, as it's called later on in this season, where she runs up not only with her cyber blade, but instead with actually like a cyber broadsword, essentially, runs up and starts fighting Skywarp with it, and then stuns her long enough to have Robbie shoot her in the face with the turret on Optimus's trailer. And then to finish her off, Robbie and Mo do this really cool synced up supercharged soccer kick, both of them kicking into her face. It is such a good scene. I absolutely think that as a scene, a season opener for this new season to show us how far the Maltos have come since battling Mandroid in Season 1 alongside Ghost, this is a great way to reintroduce us to the Maltos. After that, we get a little recap, essentially, of what's been going on since the events of Season 1 with EarthSpark. So in this little section narrated by Robbie and Mo after they defeat Skywarp, they sort of reintroduce themselves to the audience in a breaking the fourth wall moment, explaining what their mission is and what has happened since the events of Season 1, where they explain that, basically just summarize what happened at the end of Season 1 with Mandroid killing all Cybertronians on Earth, but then Robbie and Mo using the Emberstone to revive everyone with the space bridge, but that ended up basically shattering the Emberstone and scattering it presumably all over the world. However, after this is when we get to the new stuff, explaining like why Starscream and everyone are evil now compared to how they were so willing to help the Terrans back in Season 1. So as we see in this little flashback, we learned that Starscream and the rest of the Decepticons actually did offer to help the Autobots and Terrans rebuild Witwicky after Mandroid and Ghost destroyed it, essentially, because they believe that they owed the Terrans for breaking them out of Ghost Jail. However, Mo then says that the truce between Decepticons and Autobots didn't last, and that Starscream eventually did betray them, stealing a few of the Emberstone shards that they had collected together. And as we learn later on in this episode, Starscream has his own plan of wanting to use all the Emberstone shards to rebuild the Emberstone and use it to cyberform Earth so that it can be new Cybertron and therefore have Decepticons rule the planet instead of humans and Autobots. So to me, in my opinion, well, I'm not the biggest fan of them just sort of hand-waving over the fact that, oh, yeah, so Starscream decided that he wants the Emberstone for himself. I wish we just got to see some of this. Maybe, like, you could have given us maybe a 2 or... As awesome as this fight scene was, showing all Robbie and Mo battle Skywarp and Swindle, I think it would have been cool instead if we maybe got, like, a 1 or 2 minute scene of, like, a little, like, flashback to, Starscream saying, like, hey, I think I want to betray the Autobots, take the Emberstone, and use it to cyberform Earth, essentially, because I don't trust humans and Autobots after what Mandroid and Ghost did, essentially. Which, to be fair, is valid on Starscream's part, but I just wish we got to see more of it. But also, that's just a me problem. I don't think that's a problem with this episode. But anyway, that sort of basically just summarizes where we are, in that Robbie and Mo explained to the audience that for the past year, they've been fighting with Decepticons, trying to get all the Emberstone shards, and we're essentially now they're sort of even, where Starscream and Decepticons have half the Emberstone shards, and with the Emberstone shard that Robbie, Mo, and the Autobots are collecting here, they'll have the other half amount of all the Emberstone shards. Once Robbie and Mo finish recapping Season 1 and bridging the gap between Seasons 1 and 2, that's when Nova Storm suddenly comes in now and grabs the Emberstone shard right out of Robbie's hands, but Robbie just refuses to let go of it. Like, I think she has it hooked up to some sort of magnet cable, but then as he's grabbing onto it, Mo tries to hold on to him, but she's just not strong enough, and literally, but Robbie just refuses to let go of the canister, even when Mo begs him to. But Robbie says that they've come too far with securing his Emberstone shard and they can't let Starscream get it. So he holds on to it as Nova Storm yanks him up into the sky, causing Nightshade and Twitch to chase after him. And this honestly I really like, because it sets up Robbie and Twitch's characters throughout this whole season, or at least this first third of the season. Hopefully first third, not only the half. But essentially, and that's what Robbie's character in this batch of episodes is, that he seems to always be putting the mission above his family or his own personal safety, while Twitch seems to be the other way around, where she always wants to value her own family over the mission. And I really, really like this dynamic, where we saw how Twitch grew into be the leader of the Terrans back in Season 1, and now that she's properly the leader in Season 2, we see her trying to balance that responsibility as the leader of her siblings, and making sure that Robbie isn't going around basically putting himself in harm's way just to ensure that the mission goes off without a hitch, which Robbie seems to struggle with, that he's so dead set focused on making sure the mission goes off without a hitch that he's willing to put himself at risk for that, which we'll see happen a lot more at the end of this episode, but also later on throughout this season, or I guess 10 episodes of this season as well. So as Twitch and Nightshade come up to save Robbie, Twitch grabs on to him and therefore manages to break free, but in the process he drops the Emberstone shard, and while Robbie tries to dive back to the Emberstone shard and catch it before he hits the ground, he can't do it without Twitch saving him at the same time. So Twitch decides to stop Robbie and save him before they both crash into the ground. And then I love how Robbie does this really cool thing of using his cyber shield to sort of break the fall when Twitch's thrusters aren't having enough momentum to basically stop them from crashing into the highway. So thankfully with Robbie's cyber shield, they're able to soften their fall but lose the Emberstone shard, which Optimus tries to get, but that is when Breakdown comes in, and literally one of my favorite parts of this episode happens. So it starts off with Thrash and Hashtag actually chasing Breakdown down a highway, with both of them like trying to box Breakdown in the middle of the road. But I just love how EarthSpark shows off just how much of a skilled racer and driver Breakdown is. The fact that he's so expertly able to outmaneuver Thrash and Hashtag here, even in such tight situations. It's so good. And honestly, to have the very first episode of Season 2 give a spotlight on Breakdown, as probably the biggest EarthSpark Breakdown fan, I couldn't be happier that this has happened, and to actually show him be a menace to the Terrans. Not that he's trying to hurt them, he's just right now just trying to avoid them and such. And I love how he effortlessly slides under a big truck, or he slides under, I think, Optimus's trailer too, and then like Hashtag and Thrash end up like bumping into him as well, and Breakdown almost gets away with the Emberstone shard from Optimus if it weren't for Jawbreaker, who ends up jumping onto the highway in front of Breakdown, surprise him, and literally shooting him off the highway. But regardless though, it was such a good fight scene, and I'm glad that Breakdown got more of a focus here in this little opening bit with him battling Thrash and Hashtag. After Jawbreaker knocks Breakdown off the highway, him, Hashtag, Thrash, and all the Terrans corner Breakdown with the Emberstone shard, trying to get it back to him. And this is where we finally get introduced to Aftermath, and it is in a way I did not expect him to be born at all. So as all the Terrans are closing in on Breakdown trying to get the Emberstone shard from him, instead, Breakdown just smashes the canister containing the shard and Julia just chucks it away from all the Terrans, and it just lands so perfectly. It lands so perfectly into this very, very tiny puddle of water that just so happens to be big enough for the Emberstone shard to land in, and once it does, there's this huge explosion that a tow truck just happens to crash into after Aftermath is born, and Aftermath immediately destroys the truck and takes it on as his ult mode, and therefore creates Aftermath. And I absolutely love Aftermath's introduction here, how he just comes across as this huge imposing figure. Literally the first thing he does after he's born is he uses this tow truck cable with and throws it at Hashtag with enough force to literally knock her out and gravely injure her, knocking her into like one of the support pillars of the highway, hard enough to dent her chest in and knock her out. And I am so happy that we're actually getting proper battle damage in EarthSpark compared to like stuff where we had Thrash battling Swindle back in episode 4, House Rules of season 1, where Swindle beat Thrash up a lot and yet he didn't have a single scratch of battle damage on him. The only time we actually got battle damage in season 1 was when Twitch and Thrash were killed or pretty much killed by Mandroid at the end of the season. So to have minor battle damage show up, even if it's just like a small dent mark and scuff mark on Hashtag's chest after Aftermath throws his tow cable right into her chest, it's so cool to see that. And so immediately everyone's worried about Hashtag, thinking that she's really hurt or even dead. And at this point, Breakdown is shooting at all the Terrans, trying to get them to run away. And it's at this point also that Aftermath seems just to be confused by all this and is about to start shooting at Breakdown as well, but Breakdown actually convinces Aftermath not to shoot him because they're on the same side, according to him, and that he wants to take down the Autobots and Terrans alongside him. So eventually Breakdown and Aftermath fight off the rest of the Terrans and they escape, leaving the rest of the Maltos to take care of Hashtag and bring her back to the dugout. Now the episode splits into two stories, one with Breakdown and Aftermath returning back to Starscream at their Decepticon headquarters, and then one with Robbie and all the other Maltos heading back to the dugout to take care of Hashtag. For now, I want to go ahead and talk about the Decepticon story with Breakdown and Aftermath, because I really, really love this. So essentially, Breakdown and Aftermath return back to Starscream's base, and Starscream's furious with Breakdown that he lets the Maltos lose the Emberstone shard, and therefore they don't have another Emberstone shard. But Breakdown explains that with Aftermath, he thinks that having Aftermath around will be a lot more of a better benefit than just a simple Emberstone shard, and even points out that Aftermath, since he's a CHAOS Terran, he actually runs off an Emberstone shard. We see one buried inside a little like grill on his chest, which Starscream seems to be a bit intrigued by. But I also love just how much of an idiot Aftermath is here, where Breakdown is trying to sell Starscream on how much of a useful ally Aftermath can be, and literally when he does it, Aftermath's just like headbutting like a fuel tank for no reason whatsoever, and then gives like Starscream a little like peace sign too. Honestly, I've been a fan of Flea's work as an actor and other stuff, most notably the Wild Thornberrys and the Obi-Wan Kenobi limited series on Disney+. But to have him play Aftermath, I think he does a great job voicing him in Season 2. And what I really, really love is how Starscream is just absolutely so fed up with Aftermath. He's like, I don't care about this at all. I didn't ask for another Terran. So, you know what, Breakdown? He's your problem. And that pretty much just starts, like, my favorite part of this episode. And that is essentially Breakdown treats Aftermath as his own child throughout this whole episode. And I absolutely love it. It is so fun to see Breakdown try to act like a dad to Aftermath throughout this episode. Like, there's this one part which happens later on towards the end of the episode where Breakdown is trying to help get Aftermath to do chores around the Decepticon base by like loading ammo and removing it around alongside Energon. But Aftermath is just being so annoying and spoiled where like he's like, oh, I'm not gonna do this, like you're not, I'm bigger than you anyway. And so Breakdown just has enough of it where he just starts beating on Aftermath, like trying to get him to listen to him. But literally Aftermath is like twice Breakdown's size, so none of his attacks are even doing anything to Aftermath. And I just love that because it really paints Breakdown as sort of like further cements him as a mirror of Bumblebee. And that's a con I do have with Season 2, or at least Season 2A, that Breakdown and Bumblebee don't really interact at all in this batch of episodes compared to the really close bond they had in Season 1, which does disappoint me, but I'm not going to take points off it for this episode, because that's kind of a whole season problem, and I don't feel comfortable saying that's a con until we get the last 2 batches of Season 2 and see how Breakdown and Bumblebee's relationship is treated in that. But for now, I will say I absolutely love Breakdown and Aftermath's relationship in this, and there's one scene that happens towards the end of this episode that makes it so good, but I'll just leave it for then. The last long story short, I love Breakdown and Aftermath, and I just love how, like, Aftermath even calls Breakdown Pops or Old Man the whole episode, and Breakdown just hates it the whole time. He's like, oh, don't Pops or Old Man me, and oh my god, it's so funny, and I absolutely love it. Meanwhile, back in the dugout, the Maltos try to understand like what exactly happened with Aftermath and how he ended up being created when Breakdown threw the Emberstone Shard. So at this point, Alex sort of theorizes to the rest of the Maltos that, considering that the Emberstone is now shattered and runs off a high-intensity amount of chaos energy, as he and the rest of the Autobots end up calling it, he believes that perhaps the rules that resulted in an Emberstone creating a Terran don't really apply anymore, so now the rules have changed essentially with how, which I think is a little bit too hand-wavy, that essentially, oh, since it's broken, it's all corrupted and can do anything now. I think that's just a little bit lazy, but again, this is a kid's show. We're not expecting a Stanley Kubrick film here, so I can let it slide on that. But I do think, I do appreciate that they at least took the time to say, hey, since the Emberstone is shattered, the rules of creating a Terran have changed, where essentially, if a shard of the Emberstone interacts with a body of water, it can presumably create a new Chaos Terran with that shard. But instead of the regular Terrans, which just ran off cave water, it seems to be that these new Chaos Terrans, while they do run off cave water as well, they're powered by an Emberstone shard as their spark, essentially. So if that shard were to be removed, they'd pretty much die. So at this point, Robbie is still a bit upset that they lost the Emberstone shard, and he and the rest of the Maltos are wondering how they're going to get the Emberstone shard back from Aftermath and Breakdown. And that's when Robbie comes up with an idea to essentially pull off a huge, basically, swindle slash heist on Starscream and Decepticons. So to do this, it's a really cool way they do it. So it starts off with Dot, Megatron, Optimus, Mo, Thrash, and Jawbreaker heading to a pier where Dot falsely claims over a radio so that Starscream and everyone can hear her that they're going to collect 3 Emberstone shards inside the pier, the same one that we saw Optimus and Alita battle Swindle and Hardtop in back in episode 1. And this scene we actually saw back at the Transformers 40th anniversary G1 screening a few weeks ago, which I didn't feel like covering it because I just felt like it didn't really give us much story context, but it is a cool fight scene seeing Jawbreaker and Alita primarily battle Skywarp and Novastorm while Mo and Thrash try to evade Starscream and Optimus, with Bumblebee and Optimus providing cover fire the whole time. It's a cool thing. So while they're all busy distracting Starscream and the rest of the Seekers with these fake Emberstone shards, Robbie, Twitch, and Nightshade end up sneaking into Decepticon HQ when presumably no one is there, so that they can go ahead and steal all of Starscream's Emberstone shards right under his nose, and therefore basically get all the Emberstone shards in one fell swoop. So Robbie, Twitch, and Nightshade sneak up all the way to Starscream's control room to steal all of his Emberstone shards, but just as they're sneaking their way back out, and because they can't just fly out because there's a bunch of artillery systems that would shoot them out of the sky if they tried to fly out that way, they end up running into Breakdown and Aftermath, who have just been fighting this entire time while they've been sneaking around the base. And as Breakdown's getting beat up by Aftermath, he notices Robbie, Twitch, and Nightshade's trying to sneak out through the front door of the base. So at this point, Breakdown tries to convince Aftermath to fight the Maltos instead, and that brings us to this brief fight, but also a pretty cool fight between Aftermath and Breakdown versus Robbie, Twitch, and Nightshade. But it's mostly between Robbie and Nightshade, but more so Robbie, where you have Aftermath shooting at Robbie, where he's using his cyber shield to dodge all of them. It's pretty cool how the choreography of this. And again, Kevin Molina Ortiz did a great job on this scene. Unfortunately, we don't have storyboards of this episode just quite yet. I'm not sure if they'll be uploaded later today, but if they're not, I'll definitely try to get them together for whenever I make my inevitable Season 2 review, like, video essay, probably later next year or so. But anyway, as they're all fighting, Starscream back at the pier finally realizes that all of the Emberstone shards that they've been chasing Mo, Thrash, and Optimus for are fake, so they immediately start heading back to the base where Mo and Dot let Robbie know that their cover's blown. So at this point, though, they're still fighting Breakdown and Aftermath, and there's this one point when during the fight, Aftermath ends up blowing up a bunch of, like, rockets that were stored at the Decepticon base, and there's this totally random but honestly hilarious scene that happens where it creates a huge explosion because all of the rockets end up exploding and creating, like, just a basically when it nearly blows up half of the base. But just as the blast is about to strike Aftermath, Breakdown jumps in front of the blast, like literally Piccolo sacrificed himself for Gohan against Nappa back in Dragon Ball Z. It's literally like that, almost shot for shot, where Breakdown jumps in front of Aftermath to save him from the explosion. But Breakdown doesn't have a total scratch on him after the explosion, so again, why no battle damage here? EarthSpark, I'm a little bit concerned or like confused by that. But what happens after that is basically Aftermath seems to be so touched by the fact that Breakdown is willing to sacrifice himself to save Aftermath, and for some reason this weird like jazz music starts playing where we have like a bunch of human like father and son pictures, but with Breakdown and Aftermath's heads like photoshopped on them, where it's like almost Breakdown truly sees like Aftermath as his son now, where he even like encourages Aftermath to go after the Terrans, even calling him his son in the process, and literally Breakdown falls backwards, like passing out from the damage he took, and it looks like Aftermath's actually gonna catch Breakdown and like have a sweet like father-son moment for him, but then Aftermath just drops him, like completely confused by the fact that Breakdown called him his son. I don't know where they came up with the idea of making Breakdown have such intense like father-son relationship with Aftermath, but it is absolutely hilarious and honestly so sweet that we had Bumblebee act as a father figure to Twitch, Thrash, and the other Terrans back in Season 1, and now Breakdown is trying to do the same thing with Aftermath, but being totally horrible with it. I absolutely love this, and I really, really wish we got to see more of Breakdown and Aftermath actually act as a father and son duo, because unfortunately, while Breakdown will appear again in the final episode of this batch, this is really the only time we see Breakdown and Aftermath interact together, and I really wish we got to see more of them interact. But anyway, after that incredibly hilarious yet totally random scene, Robbie, Twitch, and Nightshade try to escape with the Emberstone shards they stole from Starscream, but not before Aftermath grabs onto the shard capsule with his tow cable, and basically gets into a tug-of-war with Robbie, Twitch, and Nightshade pulling on one end of it, and Aftermath pulling on the other. And despite how hard Robbie, Twitch, and Nightshade are pulling, it's just too strong for Aftermath, and Twitch is just begging Robbie to let go so they can just run away and figure things out another day, but Robbie insists on keeping the Emberstone shards because he doesn't want to give it up and lose all the effort that they've done to make this plan work. However, after Nightshade ends up getting hurt while trying to pull the Emberstone shards away from Aftermath, that's finally when Robbie relents and realizes that if he keeps going, he's probably going to get all of them killed, so he ends up letting go of the Emberstone shard, letting Aftermath recover all the shards, and therefore allowing him, Twitch, and Nightshade to escape successfully while Aftermath is busy collecting the shards. This act essentially kickstarts Robbie's character growth throughout this batch of Season 2, where I really think this batch sets Robbie up to be essentially the co-lead of the Maltos children alongside Twitch, where Twitch is like the Terran leader of the children, Robbie's more so the human leader, and I love that. So Robbie does go through a few more growth episodes throughout the course of this batch of Season 2, which I really do like, and where it's very similar because I feel like Season 2A is pretty much what Season 1B was for Twitch, where that's Season 1B was all about Twitch basically learn a lot of lessons to make her be more mature and a leader. This is what's happening with Robbie, where he's slowly becoming a leader, and by the end of this batch, he actually does become a proper leader, which I'm really excited to talk about later on. But anyway, I'm gonna head myself. I just think this scene really does a great job of paving out Robbie's arc throughout this part of Season 2. Anyway, the episode ends shortly after that with Robbie, Twitch, and Nightshade making it back to the Malto homestead, where they're all able to see that Hashtag has made a full recovery and is finally okay after having her chest dented in by Aftermath's tow cable. And it's at this point where Robbie is still feeling upset about basically his whole plan. Despite how well it was put together, it just came all be for nothing, as they had to give up the Emberstone shards they stole from Starscream to escape. But Dot and Alex try to reassure Robbie and comfort him while patching up one of his arms that got injured, saying that while the plan was really good, he made a better call by choosing to give up the shards rather than risk him or his siblings' lives just to make sure the mission got completed. And they reassure Robbie that eventually they are going to get those shards back from Starscream, and that they still have all of their shards as well that they can use to just keep him busy in the meantime. And so with that renewed hope that Robbie will be able to make things better, he looks out at all the other Terrans celebrating Hashtag being okay, and that sort of ends the episode. So in my opinion, that's a very strong end to this episode, and it really sets up a good arc for what is going to happen with Robbie and the rest of the Malto children in Season 2A. And so, that was my review of Transformers EarthSpark Season 2, Episode 1, Aftermath. If I had to rate this episode, I'd probably give it an 8.5 or a 9 out of 10. I think the opening chase scene / fight with all the Maltos battling Skywarp, Nova Storm, Swindle, and Breakdown is a really, really strong opening to show just how far the Terrans and Maltos have come since the end of Season 1. Aftermath's birth is such an amazingly powerful scene in the way he nearly kills Hashtag in his first introduction, and Breakdown and Aftermath's father-son relationship is so hilarious. I absolutely love it. The only problem is, I just wish we got to see more of it throughout this batch, though that's not a problem with this episode. I just something that I wish personally we had more of in Season 2A. The only other real problems I have with it is I just wish the flashback showing how Starscream decided to betray the Autobots and take the Emberstone went into more detail, because I want to know what exactly made it that happen. And also, I don't know, I just feel like the whole CHAOS TERRAN theme is a bit too simple, but also it's okay in my opinion. I'm glad they did that. But it's far more outweighed by the good stuff with the opening fight scene, the ending fight with Robbie, Twitch, and Nightshade battling Aftermath and Breakdown, all the funny stuff with Breakdown and Aftermath that I mentioned before, even the fake-out scene with Mo, Thrash, Optimus, and all the other Maltos battling Starscream and the other Seekers at the pier, I think is a great little chase scene as well. And Flea does an absolutely fantastic job as Aftermath in this episode. Roger Craig Smith is amazing. I think this is easily Roger Craig Smith's best episode is Breakdown. You know, I really did like him in Security Protocols as well, though this it's just another side of Breakdown we're seeing, and I'm happy that Roger Craig Smith got so much more to do in this episode. He did great. But anyway, that's going to be it for this review. I'll be back next week with Episode 2, In Ruins. If you like this review and can't wait for me to cover the rest of EarthSpark Season 2, be sure to like, comment, and of course subscribe, and I will see you guys later.